Welcome to the Old Lady Hour with Lorrie and Sheryl. Today's episode is really going to be great. We're interviewing Ryan Phillips, the owner the operator of,
or founder.
The founder of the Tuscaloosa Patch. I have to get the right words in here. Yeah, you can correct me. An online local paper, and we're here just to talk to him about that and about local goings on and what it's like to be doing some local news in a time when we really have a dearth of places that report local news. So,
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
It's an exciting time. Not just in Northport, because municipal elections are going to be going on across the state. And it's already just, people seem to be more interested in politics now than ever, which is a great thing. If you really, that regardless of like which side you're on, the fact that you are seeing more people come into city council meetings with opinions, I think that's a bit refreshing for me. I kind of view the things on the national scene a bit different, but locally, I think there's a lot of hope in people finding their voice again. And that's what we're seeing in Northport, I think, with so many of these big projects. Because we can spend all day talking about University Beach, but that's just the way that I explain that to people.
Not a university or a beach.
Correct. But the way that I've explained that to people is that's just one chapter in a story of how this city does business. And it goes back to things like the community center. That was a big dust up. Kentuck, right. Moving the festival over to Tuscaloosa.
Yes. So
there really Northport kind of has an image problem right now, and I think there are a lot of people who have gotten fed up with it, which again, that's the beauty of living in a democracy, right?
And I think that's the problem when people are apathetic and don't pay attention to, and democracy takes constant work and constant engagement by the population. And I think it's very convenient for people in power to discourage that and for however they do it. And yeah, I'm really glad to see. And as I said, we had interviewed my own daughter, Liz Lane, who's running for Hoover City Council. If you're in Hoover, vote for Liz. I can do that because I'm her mother. And I think, and again, that phrase "all politics is local" is true. So I think you can talk about all of that. But the first thing I actually wanted to have you talk about was the patch itself and how you started it and what's going on there.
Well, I'm a career journalist. I got my master's degree in community journalism from out here at the university. And I've worked doing everything from being a business reporter in Birmingham. I was a political reporter for the Associated Press, worked for a little bit for the Weather Channel. But my heart's always been in community news. Like when I worked at the Weather Channel, I felt like I'd made it, or I felt like I was supposed to feel like I'd made it.
That's pretty good.
But I was sitting at a desk for 10-hour shifts, I'm working weird hours, and I wasn't getting to, I tell groups that I talk to that, I'd write a story that would get 4 million views or whatever, nothing comparable to what I get now. And it just felt empty almost, that there wasn't that connection with a community that I was serving. Because I don't know, I guess I've always had this sense of duty to one's community. But I worked as an executive editor at 2 News. So I left the job at the Weather Channel. And I promise this is a long way around getting to how Patch started.
That's good. No, it's all interesting.
But when I left the Weather Channel, I had an offer to take over as the executive editor a couple of daily newspapers in Mississippi, one in Starkville and one in West Point. And that was where I think I really just fell in love with community journalism, doing it at this level. And we did, we turned around a paper that folks referred to as the Starkville Daily Mistake. We turned it around in 2 years, and by the time I left, we finished second overall in the state in general excellence, among all of the dailies in the state. But when COVID happened, I really was kind of put in a bind. That, Main Street wasn't, our fault, but Main Street got spooked and pulled a lot of their advertising, just because they were scared, and that's understandable. So at the paper that I was at, we really started to have to confront some tough decisions. And after being there 4 years or so, that place had really become like a family to me. I hate to sound cliche. I know most people like hate the people they work with and hate their jobs.
No, we love our jobs here.
I'm a bit of a cynic. You know, it's a hard thing for a lot of workplaces to bring out in folks, but it was like a family. And the thought of like having to make any cuts there, you know, because it was looking like either I was going to go or I was going to have to start laying folks off. So I'd been asked by my boss, Warren St. John, 3 or 4 times to come work for Patch. You know, that they were, you know, on this cutting edge of, you know, digital local journalism. But I was just such an old school like newspaper guy that I hated to walk away from that. But they did. They basically asked me the question is like, you know, if you could start a media outlet from scratch, you know, anywhere in America, where would it be? I was like, I'd come home. You know, because that was always my dream of, you know, that I was friends with the Boone family. My mama works for them, you know, so it's, you know, I always looked up to, you know, what Buford Boone did at the Tuscaloosa News, what his kids did. And I always wanted to come back. It was like a dream of mine to come back and be the executive editor of the Tuscaloosa News.
Right.
You know, and that was a big reason, you know, why I left the Weather Channel, was to get that experience of running like a full newsroom, you know, with an on-site press, all that. And I felt like I got really good at it. But then, I mean, by the time that COVID came along, the entire media ecosystem had changed.
Yes.
And I did. I felt like in hindsight, I really do feel like I made the right decision, because the brand we've been able to grow here is just completely past any expectations I had. For the credibility we built up, the independence that we show in I say we, I'm kind of chief cook and bottle washer. I don't have any other employees.
Okay.
But
well, you know, I also use the royal we for our business, but now I have Sheryl as an associate, so and fine producer of the show. So I get to say we, so that was my other question, was do you have a staff, or is it you? No,
but I think that's kind of the beauty of and what makes us so effective is that it's such a lean operation that, you know, that I do the ad sales, I do all the social media. I'm the one who came up with our daily newsletter that we send out. Yeah. You know, I write all the content, but all of my experience over the years, I felt like has been leading to me being able to do that.
Okay.
It's not something I'm not trying to like toot my own horn, but it's not something the average reporter would have the professional dexterity to do.
Right. Because that's a lot of different.
But I love it.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those that people are like, man, you must work yourself to death. But it's that old cliche of you love what you do.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. And so for the self-employed, as I always say, you can work whatever 80 hours you want. So there you go. Do you ever use stringers?
I've actually started coming around to using, or not use, but we have there's a multi-pronged question there. That I've started using opinion columns. I really like that. So this is kind of a plug for anybody who wants to submit anything. You know, that I can clean it up as long as it's not profanity laden or, you know, hate speech. But we also have like user generated content where folks can, and we're getting better about like tailoring the infrastructure of our website to be able to do that. But like first day of school, for instance.
Sure.
You know, everybody loves their kids' pictures on the first day of school. So, you know, we've been trying to find different ways that our readers can actually upload all that. Cuts me out as the middleman. You don't have to worry about following up on an email like, why didn't you put my kid in this photo gallery? You know, so it is, yeah. But I really don't have a staff, and I think or don't have any staff at all, and I think that's kind of what makes it effective.
Okay.
So, never thought I'd say that, but and I do. I miss being in a newsroom, and I miss, you know, having colleagues like that. But it cuts through a lot of red tape when the game's on the line, so to speak. Right.
You can get right to what you think are the big stories of the local moment. Yeah, I had a journalism experience in high school where they use high school students as local reporters for all like the sports scores and everything like that. So I had to do that once a week, turn them into the Finger Lakes Times, which might have still been the Geneva Times in upstate New York. So that was my one time with a byline. It was fun. So, and then I guess my one question is, there's also another online local paper, The Thread, and so that seems to be arranged completely differently.
Completely. They're owned by a publicly traded company.
It's not like iHeartMedia or something.
Yeah, it's Town Square Media, which I think is a rival of iHeart.
Okay.
The way that I explain it to folks is we're just completely different operations. They're more on the radio side.
Okay.
Which is great. I mean, what they do plenty of good journalism. They do a lot of good, not advocacy work. What's the word I'm looking for? Like community service stuff. Like they feed first responders. Like they do a lot of outreach. That's the word I was looking for. But we're just built completely different business models, approaches to things, which, I welcome the competition. I'm sure they do too, to some degree, because I've seen stagnant media markets before, and without that competition, the quality is way down.
Right.
So,
in the old days, every city had at least 2 papers, sometimes many more than that. And so that was good. Like you could get different perspectives, and everyone's trying to scoop each other. So I think there's, and I think for a while, Tuscaloosa really it was hard to find out what's going on. So, I mean, and it's such a different media market with everything online. So, anyway.
And consumers' taste change too.
Right. But we'll definitely put the link to the email too, which I follow. That newsletter is really helpful. I like that it's very succinct. You got the 5 things that you can follow.
And that's really become a much more popular product than I ever expected. I think we're well over 10,000 subscribers on that.
That's great. Wow.
And again, the story that I tell folks that, again, to always bet on yourself, believe in yourself. That, I mean, when we first started this, I was getting like 10, 15 page views a day. Trying to get this off the ground. And I mean, I'm from here, so it was like I figured that I would.
You'd have at least that many friends.
Right, that I'm at least kind of starting on second base, since I already knew so many people, and even that was difficult.
Sure.
So I mean, but 5 years down the road, it's exceeded any expectations I ever had for it.
So that's great.
That's great.
Yeah. One thing I've really enjoyed are the long form articles that you've done, the in-depth things. And so do you want to just talk about any one of those or several? Let me start with the one about Stan Pate, which I thought was really interesting.
I love it, and it's one of those, I don't know how apt a comparison this is, but the movie that came out with Tom Hanks recently where the journalist is profiling Mr. Rogers. Okay. It was kind of like that I had this idea in my mind. Like I've interviewed plenty of important people. I've done plenty of hard-hitting kind of profile-y stories. But this was during the time that he claims that he wasn't pushing for this. But that Senator Gerald Allen was going to rename the bridge over near Scotland after Stan's dad.
Yes.
Well, I write 1 or 2 stories about it, about people kind of having a reaction. And somehow me and Stan connected, and I was like, you know what? I was like, everybody thinks this dude's either Robin Hood or some kind of boogeyman.
Right. They have opinions.
Yeah, and I was like, so what I committed myself to do was basically spend as much time with him as possible.
So you get a rounded picture.
For sure, over about the course of a month. And I probably spent 5 or 6 long sessions with him, just talking about everything from how he grew up to how he made his money and kind of built this empire that he's got. And it was such a uniquely American story.
Yes.
Regardless of what you think about the man, it was just. Yeah. And I really, it's hard to find people like that. Self-made tycoons who has kind of just dedicated his whole life to just the craft. He never tried to put up this phony family facade like you see a lot of tycoons or titan type people do. So I don't know, and we're really good friends to this day. I'd like to think that he hugged my neck at the SSUT thing with Tommy Tuberville came last week. So, but it was one of those that to peel back the layers on somebody like that and really humanize somebody. Who so many people, I had more people than I could count reach out and be like, that really did change my perspective on the man.
Well, and I think that's it. People are not all one way or the other. They're who they are from, and he's been a character, so.
And that was what a lot of the feedback that I got about the story, and I think he loved it. People were like, well, that explains a whole lot,
Sure.
And I don't know, I highly recommend going back just to get an idea of, somebody you might think
Yeah, That's right. So that was, I enjoyed that. It was a really, almost like a novel. And then another story that you wrote was about the murder of the priest, which was a harder read, really. I remember when that happened. And I just thought that was, brought in so many other characters that, again, kind of like a little bit of a novelistic approach almost. But it, it was actually what happened.
I was reading a lot of Norman Mailer then.
Okay.
So maybe I was trying to mimic that. But I did, I grew up 5 minutes from where that happened and didn't know it. My dad was a homicide investigator. Not at the time, but he was like a lifelong cop, And when I asked him and my mama about it, they were like, yeah, we vaguely remember, but it was, and I was just surprised that so few people around our neck of the woods really didn't know anything about this completely heinous crime that had been committed.
It was very startling at the time.
The newspaper coverage to me was wild, just because they let them have so much more access to crime scenes back then.
Okay, yeah.
And the details that I was able to dig up just through the mounds of media accounts from it. But another, just a function of storytelling in this that kind of like with the Stan Pate thing that I found so interesting, and you brought it up, that with all of the characters that it brought out.
Yes.
And what was so wild about it is there was all of this, all of the details that came out about Father Craven and his proclivities, if you will. You can read the story if you want to find out more. Yeah. I'll keep this G-rated.
Right. Yeah. No, it was pretty. Yeah, it was very startling. Put it that way.
But what was so wild about that is that at the very end of it, with all of that research, with all of these different court proceedings and different investigators who worked on it, it was just the simplest answer. None of that had anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to expand that out more. I'd really like to flesh it out more into a book. I've actually connected with Father Craven's family since then. And I feel like I can say this and won't get anybody in trouble, but I had a friend working in homicide not too long ago text me and say hey, you'll never guess what I just saw. It was that they were moving stuff over from the DA's office, and it was the original evidence box from that case.
Wow.
And I was like, what public official do I have to bribe to get access to that? So I'm hoping I can maybe keep working on it and flesh that out more into a book, or it's really well suited for a podcast.
It is.
So if I could ever find the time, I would love to expand on that.
Yeah, we decided on this podcast we're not doing true crime, but because we're I'm an artist, so we're going to stay on that part of it. But that would make a great podcast and a great book.
We're too goofy for that.
Yeah, we're too goofy. Yeah, so I guess the other day Sheryl shared an article with me about a man in Florida who was trying to help a turtle across the road, and he was hit by a car and died. And so my first question was, but what happened to the turtle?
Sure.
We could not find that out. So
that's pretty ironic. A pretty ironic way to die, isn't it? You're trying to save a turtle.
And I did say, I hope when I die that it's not connected to turtles or anything that might be kind of funny, because I'm
going to end up getting hit by a train or some kind of weird death
it's like when you're out exercising, or you're just okay, I just don't want to be hit by a car while I'm exercising, because that would be just too ironic.
Yeah.
So anyway,
The Old Lady Hour with Lorrie and Sheryl, brought to you by Lorrie Lane Studio, 2420 Gary Fitz Street, downtown Tuscaloosa.
Well, let's pivot a little bit to Northport, since that is coming up. The municipal elections are coming up, so everyone's a little focused on that. But maybe let's start again by talking about a little more about the details of University Beach and just development in general.
And I will, I know I'd said this kind of off the show, but I just to address the elephant in the room. Yeah, my dad is running for mayor. Being the good son that I am, I'm obviously, going to support my dad any way I can. But in doing that, I've stayed out of covering a lot of, the horse race aspect of this cycle. So, sorry to all my readers on that, but University Beach is at the crux of it. It's hard to separate the two, especially when I was covering it so in depth, 2 years ago before any of the series of events leading up to this election happened.
Yeah.
But it really seems like things are moving logistically with it. It's like that they're moving forward with getting any kind of, again, they applied for like that state tourism tax credit,
right?
Which the way I understand that is the only, and that's the latest development, I guess. But the way that I understand that is that they won't get a dime until they actually start making money on that. So that should be a good sign for anybody at home. And I think that would explain why there wasn't much debate over them approving it.
Okay.
Because again, that's more of a put up or shut up type thing.
That at least has some safeguards.
And that I love the spirit of people. I think we were talking about that earlier, that I love like how active people have gotten because of their outrage with this project. But it's one of those things now that the city's over a barrel, that.
And let's step back to some of let's talk about characters. I mean, I don't know how much we want to say, but we did have a city councilman who literally went by the name Boss Hog. And I mean, and he was not afraid for a while he was in office to, make himself basically like some kind of, character in a TV show.
Yeah, and I mean, I had a great relationship with Jeff for a while. Like him and my dad had run against each other in 2016.
And that's fine.
But I'd always told him, that I'm gonna be your friend until I can't. Like, that we're all in this together. We got to work together on this. And again, he was an adult. He made the decisions that he felt was right for the city. But I think that goes back to, if you see what so many people, and I'm beholden to no one but my readers. Those are the people who, I don't want to say they tell me what to think, but I'm very much like their mouthpiece and their
because
voice.
They don't have and that's what city officials should be. They should be public servants. I think some of that gets forgotten.
And that was so much of the feedback that I got. This isn't my opinions, because my opinions don't really matter in any of this. But so much of the feedback I got was that there was just this failure to respect the citizens who elected you.
Right.
And I think that's where the disconnect in trust, not just with him, but with the entire council, where the cracks really started to show. And regardless of how, everything shakes out, in a couple of weeks or whenever the election is, the culture that was fostered in City Hall led to this. This didn't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
So I mean, and there are people who, I'm so ready for this election to be over just because of how vicious people get with each other on social media over stuff they really don't understand. Most of them.
And I think social media is well suited to that. It just kind of makes people double down and triple down, and they get in their little camps.
But as far as University Beach goes, though, we really are over a barrel, like in the sense of, regardless of what you can do, you can kill the deal. You can get the legislature or whatever the next potential plan to address it is to kill it. But the developers are still going to own the land. We can't take it back. We already sold it to, or the private people already sold it to them. The city could possibly get back its share, but they're still going to own that massive tract. So what do you think they're going to do with it?
Right.
Something is going there, and that's really similar to the Sports Illustrated resort in Tuscaloosa.
Absolutely.
I think, but just the marked differences in those projects is that I've sat through some of the public interest meetings with the developer for the Sports Illustrated resort, and he is up there damn near getting tarred and feathered and taking it standing up.
Right.
And actually listening to and trying to engage the citizenry.
Right.
While you look at the way that, or lack of the way that University Beach has been handled, that none of those private meetings were ever held, or not private, but like a community meeting was ever held. Everything was voted on that night, or held at City Hall, on a weeknight.
Right.
So again, just to see the differences in those projects really spooks me for how this project's being handled.
And it's like, the project could be good. Ultimately, it might be great, but the problem is it's a community project. It isn't a private project. It affects everyone somehow. And yet to, just treat people dismissively, even if they're wrong, even if their opinions don't make sense, They really should be heard.
And that's another thing, going back to like the decisions of, this current administration that's in there, that I really do. I think that had you took out or used the $20 million in bond money that they had initially to build a Fayette-sized water park,
Right.
folks wouldn't have batted an eyelash.
That would have been fine.
I really do. I think I would have been fine with it. I think a lot of people would have been fine with it.
That's all they wanted.
And now, you're talking about getting a hotel that would be the highest occupancy one. Actually, they would have more hotel space on that site than anywhere else in Tuscaloosa County.
Right.
And again, okay, cut University Beach out of all this. Going back to, that all of this is just a chapter in this story of how Northport does
Because it
business.
really, in a way, started with that community center.
Right, but even around that time, the city purchased, I think for like 1.6 or something like that, that tract of land off Rose Boulevard from the Black Warrior Solid Waste Authority.
Okay.
And I did. The council at the time told me this is where our water parks go.
Right.
I read a story about it.
Yeah.
Everybody was like fairly excited. They viewed it as a big win. And then when they got out there and graded it and realized that it would cost more to grade the damn thing down than to build the park.
Yep.
It was like, oh man, so then they tried to recast it as an adventure sports park, which again, ain't a shovel of dirt been moved over there.
Right.
But again, that's still a big investment. River Run Park is a great thing. I think everybody in the community can agree on that. It costs a ton of money though.
Right.
So again, it's like, that we have all of these big, and I understand that like some of the people on the council will preach like, synergy and all these projects. University Beach is just the glaring problem in all this.
It does not make any sense when you look at it, and that's why people can see that. And I think no one's really against improvements and using the river property, the way maybe Tuscaloosa has, but it's when there's just this complete disregard for sense and scale. And again, just people in the city of Northport have spoken up, and they're like, no, we don't need to listen to you.
And I mean, I just remember how, and it's something, I'm going to write this in my memoirs one day, that I got a tip the night before the notice went out. They were like, didn't tell me what it was, but they were like, you really need to buy a copy of the Tuscaloosa News tomorrow. So I did. It was like cold. I'm in like flip-flops and gym shorts and went to Dollar General at like 7 in the morning, and was like flipping through it in the parking lot. And when I finally found it, I mean, it was a legal notice, can't see it off camera, but not very big.
Right.
That said, that they would be holding a public hearing for, a proposed lagoon resort that was expected to bring in $350 million in private investment. I did. I like about dropping paper, like standing there, like just the amount of investment. That would put it on par with like a Mercedes or something.
Yes. But the problem is, again, the people behind the development are not necessarily the most straightforward people.
No, and I mean, they have a track record of mishandled projects. I mean, you hate to call anybody corrupt, and I have nothing to tell me that these people are. But again, you can be bad at your job and not be corrupt.
Right.
Those are two different things.
It's just, again, it's the scale. It's like, does this make sense for the area? And
but they've never delivered on a project even close to this size.
Right.
The one that everybody wants to point out is that Sapphire Bay project, I think in Rowlett, Texas, that I don't want to get my numbers wrong on that. I have to go back and look at my reporting, but they had this like massive condo or something built on it.
Sure.
That burned down before any tenants ever. And I think that like sparked like a federal arson investigation.
Right. Well, because you would wonder.
In this economy, anything's possible.
You might wonder. So
but then I read a story not too long ago the guy who chairs the cooperative district board, again, I'm in no way saying he's like a criminal, but he has like all this long list of violations that from like the SEC, for like being a broker. Again, it's just that kind of stuff spooks me.
Well, if you're a municipality, you really want to work with people who are proven that they're good at what they do, they're honest, and they're not going to just, take the money and run, which is, it happens.
But there was a city councilman in Daphne, I did put this in the story, that they had hired, his name's Philip Hunt, which again, I'm in no way like accusing him of anything, it's just to give context. But it was in an AL.com story from a few years ago that he had been hired to help the city with a bond that had refinanced or something like that. But the council in Daphne ended up voting that down, and one of the councilmen made the comment that he scares the hell out of me.
So that was a good decision on their part.
And again, if we're just looking into somebody's background, which the city probably should have done before, those are red flags that would pop up on a background search for me or you.
Right. Right.
So it's
just they are supposed to be responsible for the people that they're representing and to take more care even than they might for themselves.
But it's one of those when this blows up in your face and whoever we've leagued up with ends up robbing us blind and still owning the land. Yeah. It's like you only have yourselves to blame for it.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, but but thank you for reporting on it. Anyway, I mean that's the only way we know. I used to live in Northport for like 10 years, and I had my first art business was the Renaissance Gallery in downtown Northport. I was there for like the first 3 years of it, and just like hung around downtown all the time. So but the name of the Renaissance Gallery was a Renaissance project for downtown Northport. Okay. And then it was one of several consultant-based ideas for downtown. So I saw that go through multiple stages. Most of the time they would pay for the consultants and the plan, and then I don't never know what happened to the plans.
There was this culture of, before all this happened, because I'm sure y'all remember the Northport school system debate.
Yeah, and, yes. And,
some of these, I'm trying to remember, I feel like there was another big one that was like with all of these studies that we're doing, that we're spending all this taxpayer money to do studies to agree with us,
Right.
And I wonder if that's maybe just trying to make sense of what the council, like why they were so impulsive, was maybe that they got spooked by that and were trying to avoid it.
It's possible. I just remember when I was still there, and this was, I'm much older than you, so I'm saying there was a consultant that had a whole campaign to brand Northport Gateway to the Gulf. Right. So you're making a face right now, which is the same face that I made. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. We're miles and miles and miles from the Gulf.
We're about to have a beach, so maybe he was on something.
So maybe. I mean, that's when I saw the University Beach, I was just laughing because I'm like, well, now we actually are the gateway to the Gulf. But I mean, it's hard to tell. And I understand, you want to improve the community, you want to make things good for people. So that's all good impulses, and you don't want to discourage people from trying. But I think listening to opinions other than your own is the only way to keep from making.
What were they thinking?
Well, yeah, I have the wheels turning now, and again, once you get me started talking with this, it's hard to get
keep going. It's fun.
Have y'all ever been to Owa near the beach? I think in Foley.
No, I have not.
That it is a big water park. Like me and the family go probably once a year.
Okay.
And it's a bit pricey. I mean, I think it's probably $60 a head to get in. They've got water slides. It's a big operation.
Right.
It's not so much a lagoon. Well, I think they do have like a lagoon on site, but it's not near what they're proposing here. But it's a massive water park.
Sure.
That's, tantamount to what they're proposing here. The difference in the two projects that blows my mind is because you really got to think about year round, right?
You're at the beach.
Yep, Owa's covered up. It's domed or whatever. So it's indoors.
It's inside.
You can go there year round.
Yeah.
What are we doing with this project during the slow months?
Well, and even in the summer, I mean, I don't know if they have never noticed, but about every afternoon there's a thunderstorm. I mean,
absolutely.
You're going to have to get everyone out. Here comes the lightning again, because that's just the way, that's our climate. And so, yeah, I mean, there's an outdoor space is really problematic, even though it's temperate, it's pretty mild. For being in the water, it rains a lot here.
It does.
It's like, and the rain isn't the problem, there's a lot of lightning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tornadoes, hurricanes. So,
But I just think a lot about that, like how they're so successful, that and being at the beach.
Right.
That's
Right.
kind of the place you would go to a water park.
people are
at.
looking for something to do.
Right.
And so, I mean, I don't know, like it'd be interesting to see how other kind of just amusement places are doing, like in Tuscaloosa, for instance, like the mini golf.
It's okay. I'll
Yeah.
give them a solid
Yeah.
plug. It's a bit
Yeah.
expensive, but
Okay, I
it's
haven't been
not,
there.
it's a fun experience.
But yeah, I'm just thinking, it's small enough maybe, but it's outside, it's in the elements. And even like the AMP, I think the same thing, they run into a lot of weather issues for concerts.
Right, the downtown concerts.
Oh, well, yeah, if it's it's a great idea to have the free downtown Tuscaloosa concerts, and they moved it to May and June because it wouldn't be as hot. But every Friday in May and June, there was
It
a storm.
rains,
yeah.
Just about.
Absolutely.
So it's just like, that's just the way we are. You just are dealing with that. So
And
I don't,
all Northport wanted was a family affordable water park.
That's right. Something like, again, which I know the one in Fayette isn't, doing gangbusters on their numbers. But it gets like $15 a head. They got a concession stand there. Now, granted, I don't mind saying this. You see a lot of Jailhouse Inc. there, that caters to a certain clientele. But it's a family enough atmosphere, and I think with the bond money that we had taken out and our much more abundant resources than a place like Fayette, we could have built something on that scale, and
Right.
it would have been really nice.
but yeah, and I think affordable is also really important. So, and that's where it seems like that University Beach is, we're going to bring in all these people with all this money and they'll spend it here. And I'm like, I don't know that they will.
And one of the things that really stood out to me from the word go with it was that when they started saying that they were going to build $800,000 condos. And I mean, we're at a time, to me, it just seems really tone deaf, at a time when a lot of people can't make ends meet,
Right.
And that's
Right.
the housing options we're bringing into our
Right.
community,
Right.
like that's what we're putting our focus on. To me, it's just kind of tone deaf, especially when you see parts of the city that like really could, benefit from, cleanup and all. So I don't know. That's a soapbox I've had since day one, just because it's kind of peering down their nose at everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You don't understand what the average person wants.
right.
right.
And that's just really being able to listen.
Right.
And a public servant who gets elected, that is pretty much their job.
And
So-
yet they didn't listen to anybody at any of the meetings.
Well, and I think, it was noticeable when you were reporting on the community center, which is a much smaller project. It was just, it's a little building for people outside of the area. It was like, it's a nice community center. It's not fancy, it's not like big, but it was very much in use. And
I've seen a lot of stuff in my journalism career. I've been to more protests than I can count. That was a first for me to see the city council call the police in to deal with a bunch of mad women and children.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, has our democracy really broken down this bad? And that was over the community center. It was just a bunch of family-oriented type people just holding their little homemade signs, and again, for you to quash dissent, no matter any form,
Sure.
that it could have been innocent, we all laughed at them for doing it. But to me, that sends the message that you really don't respect what we had to say.
well, and it's just like, we're powerful and you're not.
Right.
But that's not what a democracy should be. So,
Power comes from the consent of the governed.
that's what I learned. I don't know. So, so yeah, that was quite a time.
But also in an interesting, because now I guess it's like when I think back on it, it's like I remember all the little different phases of the story. That what was fascinating is, and I think what has emboldened so many of these people, which rightfully so, that have been so vocal about Kentucky, University Beach, is that they put enough pressure on that council that they walked it back.
They did. So
You
they
know,
were successful.
That was a big win.
It was a big
for,
win.
Like, you know, the little guy, because that whole adage, you know, you can't fight City Hall. Well, they did, and they won. Like, you know, and I think that emboldened a lot of people to be more active in these other situations that have come up. So
Right, I think that's absolutely the case. If they, you know, to see that your voice actually makes a difference is something people in power may not want you to see. So I think that journalism actually helps that local journalism helps you see that. It could easily be kind of invisible to people without some reporting.
And I have no qualms about it. You know, I taught this to ethics students that, you know, I think I break a lot of rules in terms of being an advocate journalist. That I believe in stuff to the point that, like, I'm willing to march in the street with you on it, you know? And I know that in a lot of schools of thought that that's not the case, but, you know, when you've seen as much as I have over the years and can recognize, like, when something is wrong, like just fundamentally wrong, you know, that if I have the power to do something about it and I keep my mouth shut or I don't, then, like, what good is it?
Well, and I think that's really different probably about community journalism rather than like more a national or, you know, larger sense. Have you seen, I'm curious about, like, if there's an article written by a more national outlet about this area, have you seen some things that you think they got wrong or right? I noticed that during COVID times,
Right.
Because I was actively running that COVID information group on Facebook, so I was getting a lot of contacts with some national journalists about things happening in Tuscaloosa in particular, and I noticed they didn't get everything right.
Right.
And then I'm like, oh well, that's a little bit distressing because now you're wondering, well, what does this mean?
The best example, because I have plenty of thoughts about national outlets doing what I call parachute journalism.
Yeah, that's exactly what was happening.
But the most recent has been with the Jamia Harris murder case, you know, involving former Alabama basketball player Darius Miles.
Yes, okay.
That when all of that came out, and once the trial's over, I'm going to write a book about all this, like my experiences through all of it, because I think I've taken more years off my life and used more shoe leather journalism in this story than I have in anything else.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because that was also a very large story.
When it first happened, we were given no details. All we were told was that these two boys were arrested for killing this young mother from Birmingham. That was it, you know. So, I mean, I really did. Something didn't feel right. And again, I'm not here to advocate for anybody's guilt or innocence. That's for a jury to do. But seeing how Darius reacted, you know, coming out of the county jail, I guess I just had a different reaction than a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I had a TikTok that went out of that, and it had like over 7 million views on it. And I mean, some of the comments were like, you know, you'll be crying for the rest of your life. Yeah, it's really hateful stuff.
Yeah.
So
instead of seeing a young man in a lot of trouble, but he was just kind of, I mean, it looked like, okay, he's standing there. He's the wrong place, wrong time.
Mm-hmm. And he might have been, you know, that like we've already gone through one trial with it, and that changed a ton of my perspective.
Sure.
Once, you know, you really got a full idea of all of the evidence the state had against him. But in those first month or two, it was the national media was just piling it on this boy. You know, that I went on Feinbaum a couple times talking about it. And it was even a bit frustrating going on that show because they didn't want to talk about the details of the case. They wanted to talk about
just about the basketball team
or about the national media, like just painting this picture of what had happened. Because again, when Brandon Miller was involved, who ended up, I think he was like number 2 or 3 overall pick in that year's NBA draft.
That's
you know, and he was at the scene, you know, and did technically, like, you take the gun to where the shooting happened, but you know, none of that came out initially, and that's where the speculation mill started running. You know, there's this one famous kind of right-wing sports outlet called Outkick that they shared a story that, I mean, said that Brandon Miller had been arrested, or that he was the one who shot Jamia Harris.
Oh, okay, yeah, so completely wrong, right.
So I just really like tore the streets up and just wore folks down to the point that I was given just scant access to enough that I could piece together in a very elementary way, not the same way that the jury got their evidence.
Sure.
Not the same way the police got their evidence or anybody. This is purely an independent person on the outside, And it did. It was really compelling. It wasn't anything like the stories that were being, there was one story, and I think this was from, Jamia's mom had said, which again, a grieving mother is going through something many of us could never imagine. So I understand the emotions wrapped up in that. But she had made the comment to one of the outlets that Darius shot Jamia because she turned down his advances.
Right.
Wasn't even close to true. You know?
Right.
And again, when I saw all the evidence that I did, all of it boiled down to 7 minutes between the first interaction between two groups of people who didn't know each other when the first shot was fired.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't this like blown up, insane narrative that was being pushed around. And I've been working like a dog on that story ever since. I sat through Michael Davis. He was the one who fired the shot that supposedly killed Jamia, that they found him guilty of capital murder. That was a tough trial to sit through, especially when you've been working on this case. And I can't imagine what the investigators, prosecutors, defense attorneys, all of them have had to go through. Because I'm, what I tell people, I'm just a nerd in the stands with a scorebook,
Yeah.
But it was, and I'm really interested to see. I think Darius is set to go to trial around Christmas, so I'm sure that'll really make the holiday season bright for everybody. But that's another one of those stories that it just underscores the importance of like having respect for the people that you're covering.
Yes.
Instead of jumping to conclusions and making accusations that will stick for forever. Like there are still Auburn fans, which again, they're Auburn fans who give it to them for that who still say that Brandon Miller killed Jamia Harris.
That's right.
And I guess so that moniker never really went away. But it was just as a case study, it's fascinating, but it's heartbreaking all at the same time. And I've really left a lot on the field and left a lot of emotions, let a lot of emotions come out, during all that.
And that is an interesting thing because you can see the people that you're covering, and see many sides of it, and families, and the impact it has on some young lives.
Like I hug Darius's parents every time I see him in court.
It's just
like they're really sweet people who I've gotten to know in a much closer way than a lot of my sources. So I don't even view them as sources now. They've definitely become something bigger than that.
And so, this has real human impact. And I think that maybe the more dispassionate school of journalism doesn't recognize that, maybe.
Right.
Because we're not robots, not yet. I'm sure at some point our robot overlords will have more say, but for now.
That's why it's always important to say please and thank you to ChatGPT.
That's right. I have been preaching that for years.
Well, I've always wondered when they say, prove you're not a robot. I'm like, should I?
No, I will say, and I'm not trying to give too many of my secrets away, that I used to really hate the idea, and I don't like the idea of automation in news, like where AI just like automatically generates stuff. But I will say ChatGPT as a journalism tool for me is game changing.
Okay.
When you talk about its ability to transcribe, to comb through search engines, to help me edit my writing, that I can plug it. And I've started doing that more, that once I get finished writing something, I'll plug it in and be like, read over this for any AP style errors or,
Good.
Because I don't have an editor. So it's I have to find any kind of utility I can through it. It is, but I'm just surprised how much utility I found in it, because I hated on it so bad for so long.
Well, all these things are tools, and I always think back to, again, because I'm old, and we do have to put a little bit of the old lady part in here. When I remember when answering machines first came out, and a lot of people thought that was the devil, like that was the end of civilization. And of course now we've gone past answering machines, and now okay, and I hate voicemail, but, just text.
And now we're talking to all of you.
Right.
Over the airwaves.
Right, that's right. So anyway, and I do think there's always a bit of hysteria over new technology that we're not really sure what it's going to do. You can do both good and bad, but it is a tool ultimately.
But especially when something can think for itself. Like, I think that's what spooks me about AI.
It's all a little.
At what point does it see us as like a biological redundancy, and just take us out?
We've seen the movies.
Always say please and thank you.
Yeah, right, that's right. Be polite to our robots. I want to remind everyone that today's episode comes from our sponsor, Overly Helpful Helene. Remember, when you need someone who's overly helpful, call Helene.
Helene.
So Ryan, thank you so much for being here again.
And the conversation has been great.
Yeah, so I think Northport and Tuscaloosa are right next to each other. In fact, a lot of parts of the cities are checkerboarded, really, it's hard to tell which is which, and yet they have really different setups for their local governance. And so there was a proposal by one of our local state representatives about maybe combining the two into some kind of overarching government. And I thought you had thoughts on it.
Oh yeah, how much time you got?
Go on.
But there is, and there's not going to be much in the way of support from any of the municipal bodies. Nobody who has power wants to give it up. Especially for it to just become like a bigger form of government that's already pretty intrusive and it seems kind of ineffective in a lot of ways. But it is, and I mean that kind of speaks to like the interconnectivity of our cities, and even on a smaller, more municipal scale, like with Tuscaloosa, that they're considering basically putting their police, fire, and 911 all under one public safety umbrella that would be overseen by one, like what I call as like the king of the police, that you'd have like the police chief, fire chief, E911 director, like all reporting up. So I don't know, it's like a symptom of our growth, I'm sure. But like, especially with Northport and going back to, again, River and Park's great. I do think that keeps pace with the growth that we've had, because I think in the last census, I think Northport was the 17th biggest city.
It's growing quite
which
a bit.
was, again, it's not the Northport that I grew up in.
It's
just grown up a lot faster than I think anybody expected. But at the same time, and I'm in no way trying to down Tuscaloosa, and maybe it's because I grew up around there, but I chose to live in Northport.
Sure.
I liked the more suburban feel and not having to push around college kids while I'm at the grocery store, and it's just that pace of life, was why we really chose to come back. And I think that's what a lot of people want to protect. They don't want, especially with the University Beach stuff, that's going to encroach on a pretty well-populated residential area, with some older neighborhoods. That, again, that's going to impact their way of life. So don't be upset when they vote you out of office.
Right.
I think that's why people have gotten so upset, because I don't think anybody doesn't want growth in Northport.
But I think what they don't want to be is like everywhere else. And I think that's the problem with so much of everything that's like homogenized cultures.
Absolutely.
And we're like, no, we wanted to be different. I mean, I just got back from Portland, Oregon, where my husband's family is from. And, the whole thing there is keep Portland weird. Portland is weird. It's different, but that's why people like it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So, don't try to be like everyone else. Be yourself. I think that applies to people. And as an artist, I'm always all about that. So, keep it quirky, keep it however you are, and not try to be, smooth the edges off.
And Northport has, kind of screwed itself, for lack of a better term, trying to compete on that level that you look at. And one of the things, and I don't know, I'll debate this with anybody, that I hate economic development incentives.
Right.
I hate giving Walmart money to build something that they definitely already got the money to build.
Sure.
Right.
Like, especially like corporations and big time businesses, just I don't see any need for that. Why are we giving Dunkin' Donuts tax incentives?
I do not know, really.
Again, you look at the Diamond Gems, like, that's been something that Northport desperately needs is, a nice steakhouse, which again, we've got Jake's Juke Joint, which just opened up on 43, that has some promise, but having something like with that kind of like financial backing and security is just a bit different of an animal than that.
Right.
Like that's something that's more stable that,
Yeah.
And again, everybody loves the whole Diamond Gems brand, like in Livingston. So I would definitely think it'll be good here. But we're giving them a ton in economic development incentives, and they ain't moved dirt yet.
Right.
So I don't know. And like one of the places that and this is just me being selfish, but it's a place that it just makes me sad is Main Avenue and like historic downtown Northport.
Yeah.
Is if it had an independent bookstore and a coffee shop, it would be a game changer. Just for walkability, like you'd have other stuff coming in, which again, I'm not talking bad about any of the business owners down there, but why aren't we trying to get something more for young people down there?
Exactly. I mean, I was there for so long as an art. Well, we had I had my first foray into the gallery life there in a very small space, and that was when really we were written up in Southern Living when Southern Living was the Bible of the South, and we had tour buses coming in. It was kind of like, it was very quirky, it was very funny, but there was a lot of art, there was a lot of artists, a lot of odd little places, and people loved it. And like, don't make it like everywhere else.
Right. And I think, with having Kentuck down there for as long as it's been, that adds to the quirkiness and the weirdness of it. I love that.
But what happens with art spaces, and I've just seen this over the years, is that we move into spaces that are cheap because we can afford them. We need room to make our art, and then we make a place nice because people are like, oh, look, this is fun, and they like the art. And then businesses think, well, we can raise the rents. Oh, now it's more valuable. And now the artists get driven out, and it happens over and over again. I mean, it happens in New York. Those loft spaces were like, they were picked because they're cheap, and then like, well, now you can't afford them.
But it was just as a kid who like grew up going to the Kentuck Festival, and seeing like all that they did for our community, it just breaks my heart. The fact, because it was like the way I've described it to folks, it was like in our cultural DNA.
Yes.
Right.
Like that it was a very uniquely, I hate the word unique, but a very uniquely Northport concept.
Right.
Even down to its name.
It began as a street fair way back. So I know Cheryl's done a lot of oral interviews and writing about Elaine Goodman, who was one of the first artists that participated, and it was just like that's where it was, and it grew into something quite bigger, which is great. But also having an art center with studio artists hanging about, making mischief, which is I was part of it briefly. That was great. It was, but yeah, so you don't drive that out.
Right.
For something that you could see everywhere else.
I guess we'd much rather have a lagoon and beach resort.
So you mentioned that you wrote a satirical article about what you would do if like you were in charge of like Tuscaloosa, Northport Metro, the giant thing. So tell us a bit about that.
And it was just more of a lighthearted thing because just the idea of any of these people like ceding power is just out of the question. So, I had some fun with that. I mean, it was stuff like, like outlawing like Auburn clothes, and I'll have to, you can look it up. I was going to try to find it because that one kind of caught me off guard. But if I was the dictator of the Tuscaloosa Metro, you can look that column up, and I hope you have a good laugh with it, but totally not serious.
Yeah, well, that's good. Like, so if you could change some things about this area, what would you change?
The fact we lost to Vanderbilt last year, that one stings still. If I could go back and fix anything, that would probably be it.
That was a very bad game.
But I think with Northport, especially downtown, like having something like an independent coffee shop, a pub that's not also a family restaurant, and a bookstore, something for like young adults to enjoy that, that wouldn't necessarily be catered to college kids.
Right.
But because there's been a lot of talk like this election cycle about like, where would you go in Northport if like you took your wife on a date or something? And nowhere. Like I'd come to Tuscaloosa, like why would I do that? There are plenty of great places in downtown Tuscaloosa. They're just right across the bridge. But I get that, you want to spend like money in your community. But Tuscaloosa is my community.
Right. So that's what I said. It's hard to tell if you don't know and you didn't grow up here.
I was born at DCH Regional, like I'm not in Northport.
Right.
So,
my
dual citizenship.
My two were born actually in the Northport DCH. The first one, when it was a private, it wasn't part of DCH. And then second one it was, but they were born in Northport. We lived in Northwood Lake for quite some time. So,
but also, and I thought about this too, that, we were talking about just Northport's like quirkiness and like the things that make it special, but, stuff like Dickens downtown.
Right.
I love that. Like, like that's the kind of stuff that makes us Northport.
Yes.
And I would hate to see us like lose any of that kind of tradition and spirit. But we do. I just love to see Main Avenue become something a little bit more than it is.
And there's room for it, although I was a little bit surprised to see how they developed like the condos at the end of by the levee. I don't know why that is, but there it is. And
that was an issue that came up. I went to part of the political forum last night at the Northport Community Center, and that's something that evidently a lot of people are like really interested in, is like redeveloping the whole levee area.
There's a lot of space there.
There really is. But like especially like with the problem like the restaurant, and I wonder why that is. Nothing's ever done well there.
Right. Now it seems like it's office space.
Probably. It's a huge building.
It's a huge building, but there's another name on it. It looks like they're using it for not restaurant use anyway. But there's that whole riverside is really beautiful. And people are always walking over there, and they're walking on the trail of the levee. So to do something with that,
Tuscaloosa's really invested in stuff like that.
They have. I noticed now. This is funny, but just where across from Matthews, where they had the Target Center, it was called
the Sprayberry Center.
Sprayberry Center. There was a tree there for years, and I drive by there all the time. That was my favorite tree, and I noticed this week it's gone.
Oh, that is sad.
I know. I'm very sad about that tree. But I'm not. Looks like something's going in there. I have no idea what.
Yeah, I went to Target. I was sad to see that building.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was really old. I think that
it was for our listeners who are not from here. It was like a gifted program was at the Sprayberry Center along with special needs. So it was like both. You didn't happen to have Kristen Frangoulis as a teacher, did you?
She wasn't my homeroom teacher, but I remember she always wore like the fun headscarves.
A lot of scarves, a lot of makeup. That was Kristen.
Yeah, very memorable one. But I never had her for homeroom.
Yeah, okay. She did a lot of theater, and so she's a friend of mine. I did painting with her, and then she did a lot of theater, and she taught there for years, and moved back to Maine. So.
Oh wow! So I wouldn't be the person I am today without having gone through Target. So
okay.
I don't know. I think they still do something similar to it. I think they call it Gate now or something.
Okay.
But it's not like it used to be. I think it's changed a lot. So
and just like maybe one of the things we hadn't really talked about is the school system and the county system set up. So do you have thoughts on that?
Well, Northport isn't going to be getting its own school system anytime soon, so I hope anybody with any of those ambitions, has kind of tempered their expectations. That the fact that we had 2 different property tax increases get voted down within, a year and a half, something like that of each other, for both the city and county schools, for those who don't know. That's not. I have a kid that goes to Eccles right now. She just started 8th grade. We're never going to vote on that again while she's in school.
Right.
Like it'll be another decade before that ever gets on a ballot, if at all it does. And that we have different, from the way I see it, we have different sets of problems facing our two like public school systems. With the city, it's the fact that, and I did a lot of reporting on this, that I was really interested that, which again, I love Mike Daria. I think like the work he's done, and that Board of Education has done a really good job. But their issue was, with just staffing,
Yes.
that with after COVID, like there was a lot of truth to that they had hired a lot of they had invested in people instead of facilities, and then those people still have to get paid. Like, once the federal aid runs out.
Right.
So they had kind of painted themselves into a corner with that, which I don't think is anybody's fault. I think it's just, school systems are incredibly expensive. They don't make you any money.
Right. And they're not supposed to.
But with the county, it's more facilities based.
It is.
That you have some of these, we're busing kids across town to go to NIS, when they have a school they deserve a new school in their community. I've kind of had an issue with that ever since the beginning. But, we just built, I think it's $24 million or something like that, all in bond money to build NIS, which my kid went through. We loved it. It's the nicest school in the whole county.
Which schools?
It's the one by County High.
Oh, okay.
It opened 3 or 4 years ago, I guess, at this point. But it's the newest school in the county. It's extremely nice, But what about everybody else? Like Holt got a new high school. That's great, But what about the kids up at Walker?
For sure.
Like this, where I went to elementary school. It's the biggest elementary school in the county.
Right.
They have kids eating lunch in their portables because their lunchroom isn't equipped to deal with it.
Right. I mean, this county system is a huge
Massive
geographical area. And, the support system for it probably is
And a lot of people don't realize that. It's nearly twice the size of the city schools.
Yes, it's huge. And my daughter went to Fawcett Vestavia, and a lot of portables. I called it the PTA mafia because we were raising so much money all the time, and the parents raised the money for the gym. And
that's a big thing with County High, that if we're talking about, County High's a 7A school. It's the only 7A school that doesn't have an auditorium.
Right. And that, why?
Somebody in the community can't pony up $1 million and we'll name it after you. Like, that's just wild to me. But
there's a lot of things like that where it's like, well, we could do better.
But that's, to give a pat on the back to the folks in Taylorville, though, like the Hillcrest community is like super supportive of that school.
They are.
Like that, I mean, you really do have a lot more community buy-in with them. Northridge, they got more expensive facilities, stuff like that. It's a different kind of clientele. But I think when you're comparing like a County High system to, again, our newest 7A with Hillcrest, like their community is just so much more invested over
And that really needs to happen. My experience was within, my daughter also went to Riverside, which was great teachers. The school had probably flooded in all the Northport floods. So she was sick the entire time. It was just really moldy. And I don't think it's changed. I mean, there it is. And then we moved to Tuscaloosa specifically after, and they had a vote to not increase the county funding. And the city of Tuscaloosa did. So, she was in that first class at Northridge, which, they had problems still. And my son was a lot younger, so we ended up staying in that system. Again, they had a lot of problems. The money doesn't solve everything. And there's probably never enough. And then, of course, they had a lot of problems with where to put kids. So they were still busing kids from Southridge system to North, way across town, trying to have, I remember one of them, the band teacher had to do both Northridge and Southridge.
Oh, wow.
So how to do that without, he was stuck in traffic most of the day. So, there's always problems, but they could be solved.
But you have this, which again, I guess I'm on the side that supports schools because I have a kid in it right now. But you had so many people who voted against the property tax increases because I don't have kids in the school.
And you're like, and that's where the idea for me is that's where the community comes in.
Right.
We have to support each other, because that kid you're not supporting now, maybe they're not going to be your doctor when you're old. You know?
And I did. If you want to talk about, who's going to support them, the support that they get. We'll use Northport as an example. The support that the schools do get is token at best, and they have to sing and dance to get it,
yes.
right? That I did. I'm not going to name names, but there was one council person that absolutely dressed down an official from County High who had come to ask us when they're trying to hire a football coach. He's like, maybe right before they hired the Weingarten guy, who they made him like the highest paid coach in Alabama or something. But he did. He was coming to the city council, but hey, everybody be complaining that our football program is bad, so we got to go get a good coach. Please give us money to make this happen. And they did, just ripped him to shreds, in front of God and everybody. And it was like, if that's the best that our school system can expect from our elected officials, the community needs to do a little bit more. Because the city hall is not going to save them.
Right, that's right.
But again, for whatever reason, I am a little bit envious of how much community buy-in they seem to have in Taylorville compared to Northport.
Well, maybe that's something that can happen with more engagement in general. And sometimes it takes a little bit of adversity, maybe, to get people out of their chairs at home, and a little discomfort can sometimes create some good things. So that might be the silver lining. Maybe there's a silver lining to the University Beach.
And I really do mean that I am proud to see just how active folks have gotten.
Yeah.
Because I was sitting through a lot of those meetings when nobody was in there.
Sure.
So I don't know, that just gives me hope that, maybe folks aren't totally living through social media.
I think
and actually getting out.
And I'm sure, the pandemic really did do a number on us, because we were for a while, and it's taken a while to get out from under it. So anyway, well, thank you so much for your time and your insight and your work as a local reporter. So everyone go out and sign up for the Tuscaloosa Patch.
Thank you all for having me.
Yay.
Oh, Sheryl, it's time to see our shows.
Oh, yeah, I gotta watch my show.
Okay.